Sound check. Streaming live on YouTube using the Prism Live app. Jesus took a bullet for you. There were no bullets in the time of Jesus.
Like constructs, I don't get it.
So what?
Well, that's what I'm asking you.
Leave them alone.
I don't bother them. I see how they
Leave
are.
them alone, and if you are interested in the doings of God, you can piece it together. I told
Frozen. I haven't used.
Yeah, but I understand that. But in reality, I think this is why the Christian church is collapsing, because of all the infighting and the bitter.
It's not what we're here to watch tonight, but I just want to quickly check the sound.
Well, that's what I'm asking you.
leave them alone.
I don't bother them. I see how they are.
If you are
written sound here.
interested in the doings of God, you can piece it together.
Why the Christian church is collapsing, because of all the infighting and the bitter.
It's not what we're here. Okay, and you can hear me, so that's about that. All right, so a couple things. All right, I want to be pretty careful about the way I say things tonight. But primarily, I've kind of had to take a step back in the last couple of days and really look at what I'm doing, what my objectives are, what I need for myself to proceed forward, right? Is there an end game here? And for me, it was kind of about this whole thing, slowing down, getting things in perspective, trying to figure out where my trajectory in life has been going, right? And a big part of this process was trying to find a way to get sober and stay sober continuously, right? And one of the ways that I've been able to do that has been through AA and other programs. However, the reason they call these programs and the process that you're going through is reprogramming your brain, right? Especially after long periods behaving addictively. There are a number of things I take issue with in these programs, specifically in the 12-step model of programs, right? That I've had to put aside and find workarounds for. A big part of the project for me has been acknowledging with an open mind the experience of other people's, even when it differs to whatever degree from my own. And I think I've gotten better about doing that, right? A big part of the problem is that as much as I try to identify the similarities, the commonalities between myself and other humans, in many instances, we are dissimilar, especially in the realm of people who are just coming to terms with addiction and just learning about these programs. Now, no doubt, my drinking and drug use has become a major problem for me over the years. And so this should not be construed as anything like that I'm not focused on sobriety. And it's not that I'm leaving AA, right? I'm in the middle of my 4th step, and I intend to work through these steps, provided the workarounds that I'm using, right? But one thing I had to put in perspective, right, is the fact that what this is a program of self-improvement, right? And it's also a support program for people who don't have other means of support for a particular set of problems, right? And what it doesn't work for are all of the other problems in your life, right? Now, you may meet connections through the medium of this program that help you to work through those issues, whatever it be. If it's employment, mental health, stuff like that. But that's not what the rooms are built for, right? That's not the point of the program. So I acknowledge that for myself, moving forward, as an artist, as a philosopher, as the type of person that I am, right, that this program only takes me so far. And then it becomes a hindrance. I've heard a lot of smart people say, most of the people that I consider mentors within this realm, take what you need from the program and leave the rest. And that's the state I'm at. Right now, even though I don't, I'm at 34 days of continuous sobriety. My last couple of slips over the last couple of months have been very minor. They've been one-nighters with actually relatively very little alcohol or weed involved, right? So even though I restarted my sober time, which was a difficult thing for me to do, I count all my time of programming continuously, except for a short spurt of time there between like maybe April, May, when I wasn't involved in a program, right? Because other than that, I have been continuously been involved in recovery programs of one sort or another for about 2 years now. Right? I've taken most of what I'm going to get from it. I made a lot of contacts, whatever tools that I had that I didn't have before or that I possibly had forgotten about are back with me. And hey, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights, good to see you. Sorry, I saw you in the chat there. I don't know how to fix this so that the comments stay on screen longer on the Prism end, because I can't see. I know that they're on for like 30 seconds or a minute on the live there, but they only pop up like instantaneously for me, so I'll go back and check them. But if anybody else is in the comments, hello, welcome. So I was in a big book study on Friday. I believe it was Friday. And was directed to this page in the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book, 263. He sold himself short. The day before I was due to go back to Chicago, it was Dr. Bob's afternoon off. He had me to the office and we spent 3 or 4 hours formally going through the 6-step program, as it was at the time. These are the original 6 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. The 6 steps were 1. Complete deflation. 2. Dependence and guidance from a higher power. 3. Moral inventory. 4. Confession. 5. Restitution. 6. Continued work with other alcoholics. Dr. Bob led me through all of these steps. At the moral inventory, he brought up several of my bad personality traits or character defects, such as selfishness, conceit, jealousy, carelessness, intolerance, ill temper, sarcasm, and resentments. We went over these at great length, and then he finally asked me if I wanted these defects of character removed. When I said yes, we both knelt at his desk and prayed, each of us asking to have these defects taken away. So these 6 steps that Dr. Bob got are actually kind of a bastardization of another 6-step program for self-improvement that he geared towards this program for alcoholics, right? But in general, it's essentially he's taken, what is like a Tony Robbins-esque, better yourself, improve your life type of model, and geared it towards people who are at the very depths of alcoholism and addiction. And in this model, right, it requires that you begin to believe certain things. So, and then he breaks it down into the 12 steps, so that there's this kind of process of deflation of the ego, right? Which is essentially acknowledging that your shit's fucked up, that drinking is a problem for you, and that you have little or no control over yourself in addiction, right? And then you have to find, because this can be like supremely nihilistic for many people, and their minds are weakened, especially as a result of the addiction itself, right? And so you have to install some authority in there. And the authority is your higher power, your God, as you believe him. And they try to say, well, it's not religious, right? But it's clearly geared towards a Christian audience, because more than likely most of the people who are coming to him in 1940s America or whatever were probably Christian, and it resonated with them. But they say that you must have this higher power with which to turn your will and your life over to. Now, I've put in logic as a placeholder. Logic is not a higher power, right? In the strictest sense of what it's talking about. Logic doesn't have any control over anything. Logic is not dictating outcomes, right? And logic is personal to each individual. Each person possesses the ability to use logic, right? But that logic is also going to be unique to that individual. So after, processing and intellectualizing all of this, and then there's a third step of turning your will and your life over to this power. Essentially, I'm not in control of everything. So, it's come to my attention that there's many issues with this. What they call spirituality, I see as simply community, human connection. what they call higher power is a thing that I don't, in fact, believe exists. I'm not persuaded or convinced of. It doesn't work for me, right? If I say my higher power is the universe, well, then what would I be doing turning my will over to the universe? The universe has no, doesn't hold any stake. It doesn't care. The universe is indifferent. Hey, Mikey, good to see you. I just heard from Silverwolf about you. Maybe we'll talk later. But I don't want to lose my train of thought here. There are multiple sections in the program where, they instruct you to pray and meditate on things that come up on a daily basis. And many of the people in this program have some genuine belief that when they pray or meditate, they're talking to some entity other than themselves, which I don't believe, right? If I meditate, it is an internal dialogue of my own mind. Okay. So basically had to wiggle my way around those steps. Now, what's useful? The personal inventory. I can start to see various flaws in my ways of thinking, right? What they call character defects, which I've heard other people, kind of make this argument like there aren't defects of your character as a person, right? There is flawed reasoning, there's flawed action, right? And these things can be recognized and corrected for. But believing that you yourself are merely flawed as a person and that the only way to become right is to pray about it and have some entity outside of yourself change your behavior, right, is not necessarily something I can subscribe to. So the 12 Stoic steps have a lot of answers for this. A different way of looking at these 12 steps and the way they can be worked. And I find that very useful. So as I said, I'm not bailing out of the program, but I am kind of rethinking my investment in it. Now, so since I've been back out of detox, I've done what I set out to do. I've done well over my 90 meetings in 90 days, right? So that was one thing that I fell short of when I came out of rehab, and now I have done. And in the past week, I've had conflicts come up so that I've no longer been able to attend my outpatient groups with my healthcare provider. As a result, my supplement has been going to a shit ton of AA meetings, right? Which is what my sponsor recommended I do. I was already doing it before he recommended it. And I've had this frustration ongoing with my healthcare provider. They're not getting back to me in a timely fashion. I'm off of work to attend a program, and they're not giving me any services, right? And they're just like tough cookies. And I acknowledge that, that is in part because of my own decisions, right? Because of what I did would have resulted in my removal from the program that I was in anyway. Regardless of the other person's decision, I have no idea whether that other person has been removed from the program as well, which they rightly should be, but I came forward, I took responsibility, and so I was punished for that, essentially. And I came to realize throughout this process, right, that I'm upset with them for not doing their jobs and not providing an alternative. But at the same time, I understand that maybe I've gotten, as I keep thinking about all I can out of this program, maybe there is really not much else they can do for me, right? They have been a placeholder for 2 to 4 hours of my day during the week while I'm off work so that I'm not left to my own devices. And all I have to do is replace that with another group or activity, right? And there are many out there for me to choose from. I don't need them to continue programming. But of what use is this program? Most of the time it is a case of no new information being received. It's a lot of redundancy. And I understand that, we need some of that. But I think I'm finally growing past a point where redundancy is the answer, right? It's this continual exercise in patience that is not necessarily beneficial to me. And so I have to find more activities that are beneficial to me. So at this stage, I'm looking at going back to work, probably the end of this week or the beginning of next week. I don't anticipate hearing back from my doctor probably until the following week from the way things are looking. Now, there's a chance I may hear back sooner, but I'm not counting on it, right? So I'm on my own, essentially. I have myself, I have my sponsor, I have my friends and mentors. I mean, it's not like I'm totally on my own. I have a large support network that I've built up here, and it's just a matter of utilizing that support network and not relying on the doctors or the treatment facilities anymore. And so if I'm doing that, now the question is, when is this program and where is this program useful to me? And when am I just becoming addicted to going to groups that oftentimes are not beneficial for me, just for the sake of going there? And what else could I be doing with that time? And I think I have, several answers. I need to work on my fitness. I need to work on my music. I've been reflecting. I've got a brand new album's worth of music that I just have to kind of finish. I've got a number of new musicians that are ready to jam with me, who are in the recovery circles. And so that's definitely something for me to start going with. I have my regular commitments with AA and Recovery Dharma that I'll continue doing, every week. But, really, when you're looking for the cure for boredom, and I already know what that is. I have plenty of things to do. I just do them sober now. And none of that requires me going to, 3 AA meetings a day, right? It's just a matter of using the tools that I've acquired and the connections that I've made to keep that thing going. All right. I'm sure I'll think of more. I found this video and another we'll look at here possibly. I just want to check this out. This is from a site called Fit Recovery. Is Alcoholics Anonymous a cult?
Is it possible that people who were addicted to drugs or alcohol or some gambling or some other behavior get addicted to the addiction community? There does seem to also be a circuit in the brain of addicts to discuss and want to talk about their recovery a lot. And I mention this not to poke at them, but rather the opposite, because I think that one thing that is challenging, at least for me and having friends that have a propensity for drug or alcohol addiction, not all of them, but certainly some of them, is when they're talking about their recovery, I feel like it's all they talk about. So what I'm really asking here is, can we become addicted to sobriety?
So this is a great question, and it links into some of the other things we've been talking about, having to do with where do we settle out? What is the way to live between pleasure and pain? And I implied earlier that ultimately we want a resilient balance that's sensitive to pleasure and pain, but that can easily restore homeostasis after we indulge, even when we indulge greatly. But the truth of the matter is that people with severe addiction, I believe temperamentally, want those extremes, and they're wired for that kind of intensity that is more than just slight adjustments around the fulcrum, right? It's like they want
that
the big.
I can relate to. And so the other thing that I wanted to say that just came to mind about kind of regarding that is, in most of the recovery circles, when there's this question that's asked, well, did the person have an underlying mental health disorder before they were an addict, or was their mental health disorder caused by addiction? And I think almost every time you could say that the predisposition for becoming addicted, right, is in of itself a mental health disorder, and there's probably some other underlying mental health disorder at play there, right? For your circuits to be wired in such a way, right? Many people, it's like we're all assholes, and that's why we drink, so we won't be such an asshole. Then we turn into more of an asshole when we drink, et cetera, et cetera. And then so when we get dry, we're assholes again, and then we have to continually work on self-improvement, right? And generally, when you look at the way these people talk about themselves as people, what they're calling these character defects, right, are really all symptoms of different things, PTSD, anxiety, depression, right? These are all symptomatic of mental health disorders. So I don't think it's really a question of which came first, the chicken or the egg. They coexist, and clearly, if the predisposition for them to become addicted to a substance was there, it indicates that there was a mental disorder of some kind to begin with that went untreated, right? And you are self-medicating for that disorder.
Highs and the big lows.
They'll say great meeting.
Yeah,
They're like, that was such an amazing meeting. Or they find a group.
Yeah.
They find a group in a location.
Yeah.
This is almost an inside joke in those communities. Again, I'm not talking about a friend in quotes. This isn't me reporting. They'll talk about how attractive people are at a given meeting, or how bonded they feel to people at a given meeting.
Right.
That the meetings themselves become their own form of dopamine hit.
Yes.
And again, I'm not being disparaging.
Yeah.
I want to understand this.
Right. So a lot of times patients will say to me, I don't want to go to AA. It's a cult. And my response to that is, because it's a cult is exactly why it works, okay? Right. Because yes, it is much better for you to be addicted to AA and to recovery than almost any other addiction I could think of. And we know from Rob Malenka's work, who's here at Stanford, is the hormone that's involved in human pair bonding and relationships and love. And
really what the program revolves around, in the sense that it is programming, right? So stability, right? Consistency. You know what you're going to get every time you go into the meeting. They're going to do the same rituals, repeat the same verses, and then after that, you get to have talk therapy, right? And you get to hear from other people who have gone through many of the same struggles or similar struggles to what you have. Oh, thanks, Mikey. Received some bad news. Our friend Bird of Prey 5 died in his sleep yesterday. Oh, I'm very sorry to hear that, Mikey. All right. Well, take care and rest well. I'm very sorry to hear about Bird of Prey. That's a tough one. I never know what to do about death. So it's gonna go to a. Oh, this is a Silverwolf raid? I didn't even know Silverwolf was on, right? I didn't look. Oh, Tog, hey. Yeah, I just kind of felt, I've been contemplating this obviously for like a couple of days. But yeah, it just seemed like it was the right time to do it. And I really need to start making difficult decisions for myself here upcoming. So, all right, we'll get back into this. Sorry about your friend, Mike.
Directly links to dopamine neurons and causes the release of dopamine. So yes, when we connect with other humans, especially in a kind of transcendent spiritual
Hey,
way,
that's Silverwolf. Good to see you.
a huge dopamine hit, and it does replace the dopamine that people get from drugs. And for people who have this addiction temperament, they need it on a more intense level. They're not going to be generally satisfied with kind of, acquaintanceship. They want that intensity of the intimacy that you get with people when you're cathartically exposing, warts and all. So yes, people can get addicted to recovery, and good for them. Go for it. And of course, this can be for friendships and relationships where the one person is not in recovery, like you're going to so many meetings, you're always talking about recovery, but you know what? Much better than them being intoxicated, right? I mean, so although you may tire of your friends talking about their meetings all the time, I'm sure you would rather have them do that than be in their addiction. So
yeah, absolutely. And this is now the second time you've done this during this discussion, but now I have empathy because the way you describe their enthusiasm about meetings is probably the way that people feel about me and work.
Right.
And in neuroscience.
Yeah, and a lot of the enthusiasm that you see that comes from people in meetings is usually directed towards a particular individual or a group of individuals, that in group in that meeting. And if you don't fall into that circle of people, then you're not going to be as enthusiastic about that meeting as the person who brought you there, right? I find this happens to me often. They'll say, come to this meeting, it's so great. And then there will be, generally a large number of people. So a lot of these people like to be surrounded by large numbers of people. And that's one of the things that sets off my neurodivergent traits, right? So I half the time can't stand those meetings. I don't feel like I can get a word in edgewise. There's a whole lot of chatter that drives me nuts, right? And I would much rather be in a very small, tight-knit group. And I found a lot of those meetings, right? The less popular meetings are sometimes my favorites, even if I don't necessarily gravitate towards all the people who are in there, because everybody gets a chance to speak. It's quiet, it's harmonious, So, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I've been getting up in front of the class since I was 8 years old and talking about things I read over the weekend. Now I just happen to have this thing called a podcast.
Right.
I've been doing it since I was little, and it annoys a lot of people. I've learned to suppress it a little bit. Some people like it, but I'm poking fun at myself just to say that I now can understand that the way I feel about their reports about yet another amazing meeting, or there's a different form of this, but there's some people for which they just love intense experiences.
Yes.
They're always like...
The other thing that I find that people will get is they'll be like, this person was such a great speaker. And it's always these people, usually who have a bit of the toxic positivity going on. And I think people kind of vicariously get off on that toxic positivity, right? They want somebody to tell them that if they stay in the program, their lives are going to get just exponentially better, right? It's not always, it's sometimes a bummer when you hear from somebody who's got, 5-10 years and they're brutally honest with you and say, hey, not every day is going to be, amazing, right? Some days are just going to suck and you're going to have to deal with it, right? But that's realism, right? People don't want the realism in there. They want to hear from the guy who, got his kids back and found a new wife and has an amazing job and is just, thrilled to be there, perpetual, smile on his face. And I see through that bullshit. I see through it, every time, and it doesn't excite me, but I see a lot of people who get drawn in by that. They go, oh, I want to be like that guy, because that's what they'll say. They'll say, well, do you want, if you want what we have? And then, the question becomes, for a lot of people, it's like, do I want what that guy has, or do I want what that guy has? In terms of the way that they carry themselves, the way they conduct themselves, the way they speak, right? And you want to go towards those people, lean into those relationships, try to get connected with those people, right? And most people aren't flocking towards the realist who tells you that some days are going to suck, and and you just got to deal with it, right? They want the person who's like, everything gets better. It's, it's always fucking sunshine and rainbows, and it's a bunch of bullshit.
Trying to pull me off to Bali because they're talking about how sensual it is all the time. I'm sure Bali's wonderful, but there's this kind of ratcheting up. It's like seeking Burning Man all year long. I've never been to Burning Man. No desire to go to Burning Man.
So I found out when I was in detox this time, and a couple people have talked about it in the meetings. Apparently they have a sober party at Burning Man. Like, they have their own tent for sober people who still want to go to Burning Man for whatever reason. Like, they just like the environment, I guess, which is weird because it's a total hippie fest, right? It's alcohol and drugs everywhere, and you want to be like the lone sober camp in that group of people just watching everybody else get wasted. I guess there's some allure to that. I think it's really fucking weird.
But inside of academia, I mean, if I were to just turn the mirror at myself, inside of academia or here in Silicon Valley, work and the pursuit of more success, even if money is kind of divorced from that, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Academic work is, for sake of pursuit of knowledge. It sounds to me like the same mechanism. In fact, it feels to me very much like the same mechanism.
So, Andrew, here's what I love about you. First of all, you're willing to bring your own flaws and foibles to this conversation.
Well, they're everywhere.
Well, you know what? It's wonderful. And then you're really open and curious and wanting to understand, because I can't tell you how many people I have met who really see addiction as some kind of otherness. But the truth is, we're all wired for addiction.
See, and that much I agree with. And anybody can become addicted. I think it's very unlikely if you become addicted that you didn't, again, have some type of mental disorder or even potentially a set of circumstances in your life, right? Because PTSD isn't necessarily a pre-existing, like neurobiological or whatever, right? But your brain still gets rewired as a result of events that happen to you, and thereby make you, definitionally disordered, right? And so any, number of factors can play into that. Okay, and so kind of on that note, I feel like I've been spending a hell of a lot of time talking about my recovery on here as well as in other spaces. And Wildheart had asked me the other night if I was still doing religion, and yes, very much so. It's definitely it's in my wheelhouse. Let's go hit up some gym, Bob. I was watching this earlier. While it was live. He's doing Michael Beverly, Forrest Valkai.
Going on, y'all?
Sometimes people
started a little early today.
Are not crazy from the right as well. So, for example, there's like a critical conservative point of view.
His takes, including Greek. He did a recent thing. Atheists, soy boys over it. That goes.
Take a look at side chat. I don't know if anybody's in there or not. Oh. Going to bed. Yeah, I need to do that. Well, I've still got a little while before bed. I've been going to bed around, I've been trying to get in bed by 11 most nights, but I've been actually falling asleep closer to midnight most nights, and then I'll usually wake up once or twice in the middle of the night or very early morning. But my body keeps trying to get me to sleep in. Getting up has been tough for me. So, yeah, I've been sleeping in a lot more lately. I think I slept until almost 10 a.m. today.
They like to show up in the chat, but they don't like to show up on the screen, right? They don't like to show up on the screen. So how y'all doing today? What do we got? Dark aesthetics. Interesting conversation in the chat already with dark aesthetics. he was asking whether or not doing hallucinogens and psychotropic drugs could account for what we call revelation.
Hallucinogens and psychotropic drugs? You mean psychedelic drugs?
And the question is not whether or not you could experience some sort of interaction with an entity or multiple entities when you're
Hallucinogens and psychedelic drugs are the same category of drugs, Jim Bob.
under the influence
Psychotropic drugs are a different thing entirely.
of hallucinogens. It's just that the question of whether something's true or good is a different question than whether or not some entity or experience could have an entity deliver you the goods, so to speak. So I think the question Dark Aesthetic asked was, what if you took a ton of mushrooms and did ayahuasca and a demon told you to, treat your neighbor like yourself, or some sort of Christian platitude? Well, whether or not they delivered that, because, in Christianity, the demons, the devil can quote scripture too. The question of whether or not the messenger is saying something true is different than whether or not you have a standard for it being true. So even if
I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that if you've taken a mind-altering substance, right, it is reasonable to assume that any message you receive while under the influence of that substance, right, is a product of your mind being altered by a substance, right? It's not a product of external entities coming to you because you put a substance into your brain that altered into your body that altered your brain chemistry, right?
a demon whispered to you, you go out with Joe Rogan to Peru and do ayahuasca and puke and shit your brains out, but you get a whisper from a demon, from a little cute elf, a little psychedelic quantum elf.
I've had the closest to any type of spiritual experience on hallucinogens at various times, and not every time I took psychedelic drugs did I have this experience, but at certain times I did. Didn't necessarily depend upon the dose. I think part of it was probably the circumstances and where I was at and who I was with. I recall when I did DMT, I had a lengthy conversation with the stars, like as in the stars out in the sky that night. And no part of me soberly believes that I was actually communicating with stars, right? That was all a product of the faculties of my mind under the influence of DMT.
Quantum foam goblin. The question of whether or not that's true, do unto others. The question of whether that's true is different than whether or not you can get that delivered to you. So, you look like John Travolta in Grease. So I look like AIDS.
I don't know what he means by that.
So I look like
Walking.
what he has to say first. We'll do that. Kind of get into it. I also have I have some new animations. Got this one here. Let me see. Where is it? Oh, here's one.
If God real, why bad thing happen?
That's good.
Then who created God?
So those are two new ones.
Nobody says if God's real, then why do bad things happen? They say if God is good, as is claimed in Christianity, then why does he allow for evil? And I found a great breakdown of the Epicurean paradox earlier. I might be able to share it here later. I can add images to the screen. It's just a process.
I think I might develop this one
If God real, why?
into like a full episode. I'm like, my new arguments against atheism is definitely going to have this animated
If
character
God real,
I'm going to be
why
talking to.
bad thing happen?
Such an idiot, such a retard. $5 comes in. Thank you so much. Any chance you might? I didn't. I took a shower. So sometimes people take showers. Whose jimmies are we rustling? Just more atheists. I don't know if you guys saw, I was arguing with this guy, Brian Stevens, who's always in every
Brian
atheist chat.
Stevens a great guy. I mean,
Discovery,
from what I know of him
paleontology,
inside chats.
science TV show, which I've been watching the whole flat Earth debacle. Apparently,
he's talking about Grayson there, which is like, from what I know of Grayson already did all the shit that Bob says. He's shifting his like his theme or whatever, like he's doing something different. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that's what Grayson always did, apart from various debates. But yeah, whatever. I don't think Jim Bob's very well informed there.
I used to make fun of Jaron a lot.
Talks a lot.
And I'm going to watch some of it first. So, anywho,
Jim Bob talks a lot. Listen to me.
An extra debate with him to put the nail. I didn't have an extra debate. He just called in, and then he ended up posting our conversation in which he made some insane claims, and then I think he got roasted in the chat, and who knows? We send him on his way. Troy says, flat Earth people...
I did put a couple of comments in here earlier. There's a couple of the preposterous things he said. And one thing I asked him was, what is his evidence for God? Of course, he didn't reply to that. So.
Destruct because they all have the special access to the secret knowledge, right? Yeah. Yeah, yes. Secret,
it's like,
special
God's just like a thing that I feel. It makes me feel good, and I like the idea of it.
Knowledge about the world. So, yeah. So let's get going. This guy is, this is the guy. He actually reached out to me once, and I couldn't get my schedule, and then he freaked out at me in the email. So I was like, okay, you're a target. Let's see what he's talking about.
Life will be...
Michael Beverly, by the way, I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. I think he's a great great speaker. Jim Bob's going to make fun of him repeatedly. One thing I did say in the side chat was that Michael looks like he could be Jim Bob's dad. It wasn't intended as a poke at Michael. But they do kind of have these similar facial structure features that lead me to believe they might be distantly related, or at least they could pass for relatives.
The better you will be to those around
Okay, listen to this. Look at this.
Sikhism or Mormonism or
listen to his
closer
claim.
you live to the truth,
Okay, ready?
You are told by Jesus, do you think you're greater than me? No, of course you're not. So of course you're going to suffer. So pragmatically, if you want to live a comfortable life, reject Christianity. But never mind that. Never mind that. Let's look at this other claim. The closer you live to the truth, the better your life will be, and the better your life will be to those around you. Now, I agree with this. We're in 100% agreement.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree that the closer you live to truth, the better your life will be as far as the standard of living, your ordinary day-to-day experiences. It could very well be the case, and likely the case under Christianity. In fact, has to be the case that the closer you live to truth, the harder your life will be. The more narrow your path is, the harder to walk. So I don't know who he's critiquing, but whoever he's critiquing, I disagree with him, even if he says he's a Christian. I don't know who it is. So, no, I disagree with both of you.
Which is why I'm not a Christian. The closer you live to the truth, i.e. rejecting faith-based claims, and this doesn't just apply to...
He's making a faith-based claim right now, which is hilarious.
Can you define how that's a faith-based claim, right? Now, there is some conflation here, because he starts talking about belief later, and yes, one can hold a belief, right? And the only evidence of it would be experiential. But by definition, making a faith-based claim is something that has no evidence, no direct observable evidence, right?
Confident, his gestures and his calm delivery and his hair and his beard, and he's got it all together, and he really thinks he's delivering something killer right now.
Catholicism or Protestantism or Mormonism
Well, I'd hope
or
so.
Hindu.
I mean, if somebody, has, a YouTube channel and they're producing content and they're saying something, right? You would hope that one has a reasonable degree of confidence that what they're saying is useful, right? Potentially true, right? So I think it's interesting that he's, going to poke fun at Michael Beverly's confidence as a speaker and in the things that he's saying on his own YouTube channel.
Hinduism or Islam or Buddhism or anything else. The closer you live to the truth, i.e., being a scientifically minded.
Scientifically minded? Mind itself isn't actually justified under science. Scientifically minded.
Mind itself isn't justified under science. Certainly, I think we've gone over this before, but yeah, mind is produced by brain states, right? So your brain, a part of your body, right, produces the faculty of mind, right? Mind is the thing that you use to think, to process information. So I don't see how you'd say it isn't scientifically justified, but being scientifically minded, being of the mind to implement scientific methodology in your reasoning.
Did. Science doesn't provide how you should live. Science doesn't produce, the standard for why we should seek truth or comfort or discomfort.
A standard for why we should seek truth? I don't even know what that means. That's gibberish.
Did I have to hit Becky already? Man. Hands.
Faith-based claims, and this doesn't just apply to Catholicism or Protestantism or Mormonism or Hinduism or Islam or Buddhism or anything else.
Becky
the closer
Ball.
you live to the truth, i.e., being a scientifically minded.
He's just too distracted with making jokes and fucking with his side chat to actually listen to what Michael's saying or engage with it in any honest way.
Person,
scientifically minded person
who puts the importance of the truth.
A science doesn't provide the importance of the truth, dummy.
You idiot.
What a dipshit boomer. Be scientifically minded that puts the importance of the truth. That's not a scientific claim. Look at him.
Doesn't have to be a scientific claim, right? So the scientifically minded person you didn't even let him finish the fucking sentence, right? But I get it. Putting the importance of truth, right? Things that can be factually verified, right? Once again, using scientific methodology, you can verify claims to find out whether or not they are true, right?
Closing his eyes he's gathering all the truth from the ether.
As a priority in their life.
No, that's not a science-minded person. That's a religious person.
What the fuck are you talking about? So you didn't even listen to the full sentence to fucking analyze it.
I know propaganda. If this dude ever debated or called in, he'd be totally eviscerated. Just on his opening statement here.
Totally eviscerated. It's not a fucking debate. It's not an opening statement to a debate. If he was debating you, I'm sure there would be, a fucking... Anyway.
Scientifically minded person can't tell you why we ought to value truth or the interpretation.
No, science doesn't make ought claims. Science talks about what is.
Of science itself. This is basic.
Valuing truth is an assessment you have to make from your own, right, experiential knowledge, right? Say, okay, how many times has truth been useful to me? How many times has untruth been useful to me? What is untruth? a lie, a misconception, a misunderstanding. It's not true. How is it useful to you?
Zorch, $5. I proved that you can thrust forcefully in a vacuum, but it got me kicked out of Walmart.
Blah,
All
blah, blah.
smartest, the ones who can discern meta patterns, who see the world as it is in the physical as a giant machine, they're actually not so happy. Statistically, they're in fact depressed, nihilistic.
Let's see where we're at. Okay, nothing in the side chat here. Continue. The claim he's making here is that highly intelligent people tend to be more nihilistic, more depressed, which is actually true, right? That's a true fact. More intelligent people do tend to lead more difficult lives for one reason or another. A part of it being, you could attribute to the fact that they are too intelligent to believe dumb shit. Like, Sky Daddy is going to fucking fix all my problems and he's going to take me to a good place later after I die. If I follow the rules in this fucking dusty old book.
Empty. There's a correlation between super smarty pants, super scientifically minded people who see the world as it is, no added metaphysics, no added theology, nothing added, and they're actually more depressed. But regardless of that...
No, he said metaphysics. I thought he said metaphor there for some reason. I was probably half paying attention. There is naturalistic metaphysics, but that's a topic for another time. So there's no reason one who is scientifically minded and believes in natural methodology can't adopt metaphysics, right? They don't necessarily adopt theology because that's another school. But that's, again, a topic for another time.
To do
stupid monkey video.
For Michael Beverly here is provide a counterexample, and his entire argument, his entire absolute claim is making, even though it's taking him forever to say it. Mike, do you think speaking slowly makes something you're saying more true?
Speaking slowly would make it easier for you to grasp if you would allow the man to finish one complete sentence. But you haven't done that yet in this entire critique.
Case that you also hold from your atheistic paradigm.
Then who created God?
That Christians and theists alike hold of you because it's soothing to them. That they're coping.
That's actually true. That's literally, that's what I believe. Right? You have to believe that there is a greater purpose to your existence than the mere fact that you exist, and that your life is only meaningful insofar as you make it meaningful, and that it's only meaningful in your relation to other human beings. There has to be some supernatural entity judging you, who you are pleasing, who will give you some reward. What does that sound like to you? That sounds like not accepting things as they are, not accepting the world as it is, and not accepting the fact of your own mortality and the finiteness of your own existence.
As it were. That's usually your rhetoric, right?
Finitude?
That you're coping. So why would coping be inconsistent with your view? Well, coping would be inconsistent with your view because you're saying if you abide by truth, you'll be more comfortable. If you're scientific minded and living closer to truth, description of things.
So it's interesting. I guess I'll bring this up now because it keeps coming to mind. I was having a conversation with a man earlier, who I don't know very well, but I'm getting to know. He's been very open in our dialogues with one another. And, so essentially this person is extremely difficult to deal with. right? Not just for me, for many people. He has a, he's what you call crotchety. Um, he's loud, he's abusive, he's unreasonable. Yet there is something sort of likable about him in that kind of way that, an elderly person stuck in their ways can be likable and can be funny despite all of that, right? But he generally seems to be a big ball of anxiety. The guy's stressed out all the time. He's constantly yelling. And you would think of him as being like a miserable fucking person, right? And I know that this guy, at least, doesn't subscribe to religion. We haven't gotten into the specifics about the God beliefs, but he's not into the church. And so he's telling me about his ongoing cancer treatment and how essentially, without the treatment, he would have probably about 5 years left to live, right? But with the treatment, that could go up to 10 or 15 years. And so the question I asked to him was, do you really want those extra 10 years? And his response to me really startled me because he said, yeah, I want to live as long as I can. I love my life. And I'm sitting here looking at this guy thinking, you seem like one of the most miserable people in the world. And yet here you are like, no, I want to live as long as I can. I love my life. So evidently no prospect of an afterlife there as far as I can tell. And very counterintuitive from his demeanor, from his behavior. You wouldn't think that to look at the guy, that would be his answer. And it really surprised me. So, yeah, I don't know, just kind of an interesting little aside there.
Then you'll be better off, you'll be happier. That's just not true. In fact, your own secular view, Michael Beverly, is reduced to pragmatism, which means that whatever works for you works. So, is it the case?
Whatever works, works. Wow, what an insight.
Logically and practically speaking, someone could hold a false belief and it actually provides something for them within harm reduction, comfort. For instance, if Michael Beverly, if someone was overwhelmed with depression and nihilism and they grabbed onto the concept of God from your view, which is false, and it actually provided them some peace of mind, that's it. By the way, his banner says belief is the death of intelligence, which that's a belief. Yeah, these people are dense.
Yeah, and I think that's I don't know if that's what his banner says, but yeah, when you think about that, it's like, okay, that is in itself a belief. I think what he means is belief without sufficient reason, right? If you really expound upon that, upon like what atheists mean when they talk about the way they view the world, I like what Matt Dillahunty says, I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible, right? So I wouldn't believe something that I didn't have sufficient evidence to believe, right? Is a big problem for me in the 12-step program, because there's many things that they will say, you don't have to understand it. I don't understand it, but I know that it works for me. And essentially, a lot of what it boils down to, in various parts of the text is things that you don't understand. Rather than analyzing them, you should view those things as a flaw in your reasoning, right? And you should ask your higher power to essentially turn off your critical thinking skills so you can just accept, right? It's an authoritarian program. You just have to accept what it says. You don't have to believe it. And if you analyze it, you probably won't believe it. You won't have sufficient reason to believe it. So you better just ask your higher authority, your higher power, to make you believe it so that you'll stop thinking about it critically.
They're surrounded by yes men. They never really get on. They get on with a bunch of lower tier theists, and they try to focus on theistic particular claims, which is
Jim Bob refers to anybody as a lower tier theist. When you look at him, he doesn't even have a firm grasp of philosophical dialogue. He doesn't even understand the words that are coming out of his mouth. I mean, I've heard people compare him to Darth Dawkins. I think he's much worse than Darth Dawkins. He doesn't really understand the philosophical concepts that he espouses, right? He can just repeat phrases, and he doesn't even know necessarily how to apply them properly.
The only way for them to even get a footing on the internet, and yet the deeper philosophical questions, they'd get completely...
Right there is where I asked him, I said, deeper philosophical questions, what is your evidence for God? Right there.
Completely destroyed on.
I.e., reject religion, reject faith-based claims, reject the church, and your life will be better because you'll be living closer to the truth.
That's objectively false.
Full stop.
Completely false. You have no standard for better. You're an absolute clown. You'd get completely destroyed in a debate about this. If you're watching, Michael Beverly, you should call in, because I would love to completely dismantle this in front of him.
Just do it now.
And by men, I mean humans.
And by men, you mean you making other absolute claims.
Telling us what this God...
You're telling a bunch of people something. You've just debunked your own channel by that standard.
He's not telling them to believe in something supernatural that he has no... See, he's just telling people to believe what is true and to try to live closer to truth.
Wow. We got a big smarty pants here. We got a real big smarty pants.
Well, I'm glad you acknowledge that.
Supposedly wants, and they all disagree.
I disagree with you. Therefore, scientists disagree on certain conclusions. Therefore, there's no truth. Wow.
Therefore,
I don't know if I've ever told this on here, but long ago when my first band was doing we were recording a lot, and we ended up recording a series of skits. We intended to do a whole cartoon series, right? But we did the audio for these skits, and we voiced a character. And for some reason, it's not just the name, but we had a character called Jim Bob the Clown. And every time I watch Jim Bob, I just think of that. Yeah, okay.
Or
be a deist if you must. If you believe there's a God, there must be a...
No. This guy, Michael Beverly. I'm going to keep saying your channel name.
Give him more promotion. That's good.
Follow if premise one is people disagree, therefore there can't be one true religion.
Jim Bob. If you say his name 3 times, will he appear?
That's like saying people disagree on again, the results of a scientific experiment and how they interpret something like this. Or they disagree on the particulars of evolution, and they're all debating it. It doesn't follow that if something's debatable or debated or that there's disagreement, it doesn't follow that nothing's true. He skipped to, well, you should be a deist then. Unbelievable brain rot we have here.
That's interesting, because he will use that argument in defense of Christianity or theism, broadly, right? But would he accept that, in, say, evolution theory? Say, oh, well, there's scientists who disagree about, this or that scientific finding. Does that completely discredit evolution theory? And I'm almost certain that he would say it does.
You got fine. Let's stop there.
Why stop there? You have no standard to tell anybody where to stop, where to begin. You have no telos. Science doesn't give you a telos. Okay?
Telos.
All right?
Live your life as if your actions depend on you living in truth.
Oh, wow. I didn't know I'd need this early, but apparently I do.
Disagree. Therefore, be a deist if you must. If you believe there's a God, there must be a God, fine. But stop there. Live your life as if your actions depend on you living in truth. If
What
you
did I
do this?
What did I
you
say about atheist channels being counter ministries? They're just counter ministries. He's preaching. He's literally doing the same style of preaching. He's doing the way he's speaking, the way he's using his hands. You might as well transport this guy into a modern Protestant church right now. He sounds like a coffee shop James True. That's hilarious. He's using religious language.
So he's only preaching for people to live by the truth, right? Not made up, superstitious, fantastic claims, right? Truth claims. Claims that can be proven to be true, rather than just ridiculous nonsense like Invisible Man in the Sky, who watches you when you're masturbating, and et cetera, et cetera.
He's saying what you should do. He's telling you where to go.
He's literally just said the same thing repeatedly in so many iterations. Live by what is true. Believe what is true. Live your life as if truth fucking matters.
You're a clown, Michael Beverly.
And it's funny, he keeps calling him a clown. Jim Bob the Clown. Actually, Jim Bob the Clown had a very, I don't even think I could do the voice at this point. I'll have to think about it.
Jump on with you. I'll go on to your own. Let's go on to your channel. We'll do a dual stream. And we'll rewatch some of your videos.
What I do recall is Jim Bob the Clown was an interviewer, a drug-addicted interviewer for Rolling Stone magazine. That was his place in our skits. And I don't know if I could go much beyond that, but yeah, he was a character.
Live truth, love truth, laugh truth. Yeah, eat, pray, love, atheism style.
have a better life, even.
What do you mean a better life? How do you determine what a better life is for me, Santa Claus? Huh? What are you even talking about? You got no standard for better. You've got no standard for direction or where to go.
I think, I'd probably sooner believe that Michael Beverly is Santa Claus than believe in your God, Jim Bob.
Oh, you got no standard for truth, by the way. You hold an autonomous view of truth.
An autonomous view of truth? The standard for truth. Truth is the opposite of untruth, right? A lie, a misconception, a misunderstanding.
It's all created anyway. And you think you've earned talking this slowly with your hands like that?
You have to earn talking slowly and using hand gestures? I didn't know that was something we had to earn. How do you earn that privilege?
Exactly.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar!
I would pause it if you are
Had no
suffering.
It's useless and stupid.
I'm not recommending suffering.
Okay.
I am recommending that people try to live a good life.
Oh, you have a determination for a good life. You know what he reminds me of, honestly?
He's going to come up with some...
Help me.
So enjoy yourself. Try to work at...
must all know how to get
who this guy is.
This would end in a debate. I think you should pursue what's enjoyable. I enjoy going to Divine Liturgy on Sunday and believing in God.
You can enjoy it all you want. I mean, nobody's stopping you.
Hipster Santa Claus.
You enjoy being a member of the cult and participating in cultish rituals based on a story that is untrue, right? You have the freedom to do that. Does it make it rational or logical? I don't know. Probably not.
You just contradicted yourself, dude.
satisfying and
I'm satisfied when I go to divine liturgy. I'm satisfied believing in God.
hopefully provide some monetary recompensation in
Recompensation?
your relationships.
Tell us about relationships now. Oh, guided one. Tell us our relationships. Tell us what the standard and basis for a good relationship is, oh Michael Beverly, who has a fresh Floyd's cut. Tell us, oh wise one.
Live in truth.
Live in truth. Cool platitude, dummy. These people reduce truth to descriptions. That means living in truth. You couldn't actually do it because the ontology of truth is non-existent. It's a post-diction. This is why atheism is retarded. Because without
post-diction. No. You may not know a thing is true until you have verification of that fact, right? But the thing was true regardless of whether you knew it was true or not. What are you even talking about?
Without an ontological status of truth that requires beingness or personhood, how could you live in truth? That makes no sense. Truth is what comports with reality. These are statements. How do you live in comporting with reality if it's impossible to exist without comporting to reality? You're basically saying exist. That's all you're saying. If truth is what comports to reality and one ought to live in truth
doesn't comport to reality, right? There are true and false statements about the nature of reality. You want to live in relation to the true statements about reality rather than the false statements, right? The untruth, the lie, the misconception, the misunderstanding.
All you're saying is exist in reality.
He's doing some kind of mental gymnastics here in which he falls on his face and yet he thinks he's correct.
Hipster Santa Claus, big fail. Big fail.
If you have an invisible, unknowable God intertwined in your relationship,
then what?
It can't do anything except harm that relationship.
That's demonstrably false. You have no standard for anything you're saying. You should be mocked off of the internet. Everyone should just tell this guy what's what.
Oh, shit.
Charles Lanner, 1999. Thank you so much. Very generous.
Just keep donating fucking
and
money.
It's not something we can use as...
Oh, yeah, this is a good time for me to thank my most recent channel donation came from William Freeman, a little belated there, but did get a generous donation from William Freeman. Thank you, William. William has been a regular supporter of the channel. I don't have any dono links up right now, but generally speaking, people know how to do that. So yeah, much appreciated, especially during these trying times.
Not Michael Beverly. Anytime you want to debate me on this topic, I would be happy to.
Nobody wants to debate you, Jim Bob. You're a fucking clown.
If someone posited that the God that they interact with makes all of the prescriptive claims you're making.
It's literally made one prescriptive claim throughout this, which is try to live your life according to what is known to be true, right? Truth. In relation to truth. That's it. Just don't believe falsehoods, right? Have good reason for the things you believe.
Would it be harmful for them to follow it? Game over. Game over. Game over. That's the end of the whole debate.
Or a religious person to enter a relationship with another human being and make an agreement that you won't, quote, cheat. Or you can be like me and say, I love you very much, and I don't claim your body as my property.
What
and
a
if you want to fuck somebody else.
What a cuck. We all knew that was coming.
Did you? Now, I don't know if that's cuckoldry, right? I don't think that's the definition of that. Now, I hold a pretty nuanced view on this, right? But I'm not against monogamous relationships, between two enthusiastic and consenting adults. I'm not against ethically non-monogamous relationships either. I think either are optional, right? And the term should be discussed between those two people. And there are going to be times in life when even those involved in monogamous relationships, whether married or not, right, may still have sexual encounters with other people for a variety of reasons, right? And the best policy there is honesty. Regardless of marital status, no one person has sole or exclusive rights to another person's body or sexuality, right? And while it can be upsetting, there may be circumstances under which you would have to accept the hard truth of a person being with another person outside of your monogamous relationship, and then decide whether or not you want to proceed in that, right? So I think both things are possible. This is not a binary option, right? And only in Jim Bob's world is the notion of other people not being your property an issue.
What a cuck. Wow, you're so virtuous, Michael Beverly, that the proper established foundation for a relationship is your girlfriend or wife banging other dudes.
It's called ethical non-monogamy. Look it up. Maybe you're just uninformed.
He's a cuck, yeah. I don't own your body, babe. Who are you banging tonight, babe?
That's your choice. I'm not going to not love you for that. This idea of cheating is for weak people.
Oh, really? Cheating is for weak people?
I don't like the term cheating. Although it does, okay, so if we're playing a game, the game of relationships, by a certain set of rules, and you don't follow those rules, I mean, technically you could call that cheating, right? But again, this is a matter of honesty and dishonesty. Did that person tell you that they had a sexual encounter outside of the agreements within the bounds of your relationship, right? Or did you have to find out by some other means, right? That would be the biggest problem.
Right? It's for weak people. So relationships that are bound in trust and love and monogamy are for weak people, right?
Truth. In truth.
Okay.
Bound trust, right? Trust is like faith, in a sense. Except when you trust somebody, ideally you have evidence of their truthfulness and trustworthiness, right? By which to ground, sufficiently that you ought to trust that person, right? And if they, in some way, betray that trust by an act of dishonesty, right, then you would have sufficient reason to distrust them, right? So this is all based in everything Michael was talking about earlier: truth, honesty.
Okay.
Who are jealous and feel possessive. That is beneath me.
Oh, it's beneath me, guys. It's beneath Michael Beverly. Yet it's not beneath him that people hold views like a belief in a god, right? So it's not beneath him to have his own girlfriend go bang other dudes. He's so virtuous. So virtuous. He's so strong. He's not threatened. He's not threatened, but he's threatened that other people believe in God, and he actually holds a position that they shouldn't do that. That they shouldn't do that. Michael Beverly, I don't know if that little dark section of your mustache is your hair or just the leftovers from some. Is it not our choice to believe in is apparent to a lot of people right now, Michael, and I'm putting it on full display, as it should be. Maybe you're just in an open relationship because of your own insecurity that you'll have to wholly provide all of the elements a woman needs. Maybe you're
in that choice.
Great. So why are you criticizing Christians and other theists for making a choice to live a life consistent with their worldviews?
Voluntarily, not because some ancient book told you.
What do you mean voluntarily? We can Do you think something's in an ancient book and you're not voluntarily?
Yeah, you
can't
have a fear of perpetual torment, or at least of annihilation, right? There's those two theories. Either your soul will be annihilated and you won't get to go to the happy place with Sky Daddy, or even worse, you'll go to hell and you'll be tormented forever, right?
Voluntary engage with it.
So
do you read
your voluntarism, right, is false, right? Because it's based in the belief that some negative consequence will arrive as a result of you not believing, right? It's coercion.
Any ancient philosophy, Michael Beverly?
When my mom eats back.
This is annoying.
Larry Kraut
at this point.
Of someone who's getting paid double digits at least to tell a group of people in a lecture hall that begging the question is a perfectly fine counterposition.
His voice. It's the voice of white supremacy and smugness. It's the voice of oppression.
Too busy working. I hope you champs have a great day. Enjoy the capybara scream on me. Thank you so much for purchasing a capybara scream. I need it. I need it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Motion under the influence of some potential energy. So
all right, so he's just going to go on inventing shit with all of the preconditions for invention and pretend that he's positing new preconditions, which is just that a particle exists. Like, you know what a particle is.
Somewhere close to... Here we go.
If only in Brave New World and the other one, 1948 or 84 or whatever, they could have foreseen the cuckery and the soylent aspect of these characters. They couldn't quite fully imagine it. Oh, it gets worse, Mike. Yeah, it gets worse. Here's more of perhaps the most annoying atheist online.
Something and have a much better life, man. So like take that fucking chance, dude. Stop just living in this space.
Listen what he's saying.
Ask somebody about this, which by the way, your response was that's perfect. Like
you guys are like
go
caricatures.
Inquire more about it. Right. But would you see?
I mean, how can you become the caricatures of like South Park, like the atheist characters?
See how like when you do this more and more and more, you get into like New Testament scholarship, and holy shit, all the stuff we have that is like more supported that Jesus said, if we're gonna, bite this bullet that Jesus existed, is gonna be apocalyptic stuff that he failed at, right? And do you understand, like, when you get from point A to eventually point D, it becomes a little bit easier to kind of throw the coat off, the Christian coat, and you can kind of just put on a new shirt. And
what's the new shirt? What is the new shirt, Mike?
Non-believer.
Relativism? You throw out the Christian coat and you put it on a new shirt and it says relativism on it. You think it's better to move into pure relativism, J. Mike? Why would that be better?
Can you understand that it's not just like, I want...
Guys, free yourself of the mental slavery of Christianity and other religions. Move over to the side of nihilism, epistemic nihilism, and relativism, where you can't even say that the religions are actually wrong. Thank you for buying a Bob Chat. Appreciate that. Meg Bob will get on that if it included a statement. that I didn't see?
I think all three of these guys, if I'm fairly certain they would all umbrella under humanism. But yeah,
I want to do this. It's that this is a progress that takes a while. Nobody pops in the fucking microwave and comes out an atheist. It's like a crock pot. You stew for a fucking long ass time until you get to that position.
Well, you stew a long time to wind up in an epistemic nihilistic view of relativism. You stew. That's the meal you guys are selling to people.
Straw man.
Music for J Mike. We don't want to miss out on an opportunity. I don't want to miss out on an opportunity to play the music.
Pretty much everything Jim Bob
Again,
says about atheists is straw man. Even if he's talking directly to them, he just can't
Terrible
grasp
Colin.
simple concepts.
Though, so it's not even motivated to have people see it through a different view. J Mike, you guys are in a constant performative contradiction. It's embarrassing. You are your own Three Stooge ministry. Doing exact
pastor, but not, hey, go to a skeptic, go to an atheist, go to a naturalist, go to a Muslim. If you don't have that in there as well, you're biased as fuck.
Yeah, and again, just like
as opposed to just normally biased. Who's not biased, by the way? These are the dipshit kind of people who think that knowledge and claims and positions can somehow be basically stanced independent. Like that you could have some sort of claim or statement or position that's unbiased, as if that's attainable at all.
It's like J Mike was saying.
You can't remove all bias, but you can minimize bias. I mean, there are methods for doing that.
Jimmy, shut up, Jimmy. It's frustrating. It's frustrating when you tell us, look, J Mike didn't grow up religious, right?
Right.
It's
You didn't
frustrating.
I had like some weird spiritual.
Right. Okay. But like I definitely did, man.
Tell us your
Forrest?
story.
No.
Okay. So I can tell you for a fucking fact, man. I talked with my goddamn pastor.
Tell us.
I didn't just wake up
Tell us
one
your
day
story.
and go, I don't know, I kind of
Give
feel
us your
weird
testimony.
about Jesus and the whole magic bread and wine shit.
Can you tell us your
no,
testimony?
Dude, I spent fucking years.
Here it is.
Years trying really hard. And what I think is so important, man, is the idea that if you genuinely find
Hallelujah.
something that is a contradiction, that is sufficient for
You guys hear the violin?
okay? Because everybody always says, well, what do you need for it to be a fuck all that nonsense, man? You've got in your brain
You tell him.
a moment, a switch, where if you go, I see this, that definitely is a contradiction.
Oh, yeah.
And if in that
I just saw one with you guys.
you're tempted to just go, I'm still gonna find a way to make this work. You really want to reassess that fucking shit, man.
Yeah, we do.
That is absolutely confirmation bias. That is
why?
you
This guy's just fucking annoying the shit out of me at this point.
Why do you think they call alcohol spirits?
Because people used to believe that drunkenness induced spirits from the supernatural realm.
The answer to that question, and I'm going to give the answer in this episode here today, is actually going to open the door to a much deeper discussion on a topic that I think is one of the more important things for us to be talking about around addiction treatment and recovery, and that has to do with the word spirituality. Just mention that word around recovery circles, and it can quickly become a lightning rod for opinions and attitudes, and in a lot of cases, it can become a barrier to recovery. And
yeah, so this is another thing that came up for me, which is from the How It Works section of Alcoholics Anonymous. And just quickly, so when they say it's a spiritual, not religious program, but then you read a text like this, it doesn't resonate well with a critical thinker. So this is from page 62. This is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. I don't know what they mean by playing God. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the father. We are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arc through which we pass to freedom. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer, being all-powerful. He provided what we needed, if we kept close to him and performed his work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. Well, that's not so bad, that particular line right there. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn.
I've spent the majority of my career focusing on helping people understand exactly what that word spirituality is intended to mean, because I think that there's some misperceptions. And I've found that by taking a few extra minutes to delve into it a little bit deeper, it can help clarify some of those misperceptions and in a lot of cases reduce some of that resistance, even for people who want nothing to do with spirituality or...
There's no misperceptions there, right? It's directly indicated. They say you can choose whatever God you want, but your God has to be personal. It has to be all-powerful. It has to be supernatural. And, you know, in many cases, they invoke Christian prayers throughout the book itself and in the meetings, right? All of these ideas are monotheistic and Abrahamic. There's you know, explicitly in the text at hand, if you're talking about the 12-step.
Heaven forbid, religion. We're not talking about that, but we're going to unpack the meaning of this word spirituality, and in particular, what it has to do when used in conjunction with words like addiction and recovery. That's what we're going to talk about today. Let's go ahead and dive in.
Clever intro.
Hey, and welcome to Jim Savage Recovery. I am really excited to have you here today. This is one of my favorite topics that I'm going to be talking about today, so I really appreciate you taking the time to stop by my channel and spending this time with me. Again, I'm Jim Savage. I'm here helping people navigate the road to successful recovery. I do that with a sort of significantly creative approach for addressing all sorts of different topics in and around addiction and recovery. I offer tools, tips, resources, psychoanalytic psychology, head with Bill Wilson, the co-founder of AA, and some stuff that he shared with Bill Wilson about his thoughts about what's going on with alcoholism and what that might have to do with spirituality. Then the second part of the talk, I'm going to take that a step further, and we're going to delve into psychology. Top of the heap as far as doctors in the world in the 1920s, 1930s. Bill Wilson was the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll say this right up front. Alcoholics Anonymous and the other 12-step programs, it's no secret that they are regarded or identified as spiritual programs. And, you know, you hear words like spiritual experience, spiritual awakening. The word God is in the 12 steps. And so it's very understandable for people who are not interested in talking about things that have to do with spirituality or religion. This could be quite a turnoff to them, and that happens a lot. But unfortunately, what I see happening very frequently is rather than finding an effective alternative approach for supporting addiction recovery, and there are effective alternatives that are not spiritual in nature. I want to say that loud and clear for the rest of this talk. I am not here to try to convince you that you got to be spiritual. There are plenty of ways to achieve recovery that don't have to be spiritual in nature. One of my favorite quotes is, "Many paths lead to the top of the same mountain." So just want to say that this is not about trying to convince you to be spiritual. But I will encourage you to find a path that works for you. Recovery is possible. So that being said, my purpose for this talk today is to unpack a little bit what's underneath those bullet points that identify 12-step recovery as spiritual, and then it's sort of a natural to take that a step further and say it's a religious program. But we're going to clarify some of that stuff today. So again, there's a story in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the text that they use in AA that describes how their program works. So there's a story in there about this guy who was going around being treated by all the best doctors in the world. This was before AA had actually started. And he actually got in to see Carl Jung. He went over to Europe and he was getting treated by Carl Jung, and Jung ended up getting frustrated with him, and he said he wasn't making any progress with the guy.
So I looked this up, and that claim is made in the book. However, when I actually looked into this, there appears to be no evidence to that this actually happened. There's no corroboration that this man ever actually met Carl Jung. He claims, or the story in the book claims that he did, because it's not even coming as a first-hand account from this person. It's coming as like a third-hand account from somebody who says he talked to a guy who went and talked to Carl Jung, and then when you look into it, there's no evidence of that actually occurring. So
he ended up telling the guy, "You're hopeless." And there's a line in there. Our friend said that, or it says that our friend felt like the gates of hell shut on him with a clang. When, if you think about that, he got in to see Carl Jung, like the best psychiatrist in the world, and he told him he was hopeless. And that's a key point I'm going to get into a little bit later in our talk. But he happened to say, "You're hopeless," and the guy said, "Well, Doc, what are you telling me? You can't do anything for me?" And he goes, and Jung said, when I've seen people with conditions such as yourself, and he was referring to alcoholism, he said, "I've never seen anybody recover. The only few that I have had what I call vital spiritual experiences." And that's sort of like ding, 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 sound the alarms. There's where the spiritual experience thing comes into play. Jung did identify something spiritual in nature. But an important point, even in that AA Big Book, the next line, and I think this gets glossed over a lot. Jung said to this guy, "The only people who've recovered from the state of mind that you're in, alcoholism, are people who have had vital spiritual experiences. They've experienced an entire psychic rearrangement." That's the key sentence there, as far as I'm concerned. What does it mean? They experienced an entire psychic rearrangement. That means their whole attitude and outlook on how they see life was completely rearranged, displaced. And what I think of,
this has been another issue for me, because going through this, I don't think that my outlook on life has changed or should change necessarily. The way I go about dealing with problems, right? The way I go addressing situations. Or avoiding situations, not addressing situations, right? Those are things that should change. Your behavior should change, and that's what cognitive behavioral therapy is all about. It's addressing your thoughts, your feelings, and how they result in your patterns of behavior in response to situations, right? but that doesn't change my general outlook on things. And I wouldn't want it to, right?
And that is, I think of Jimmy Stewart in the movie It's a Wonderful Life. Jimmy Stewart,
Another
pardon my
religious
French,
movie.
he was an asshole. He drives his car into a river and almost drowns. He has the near-death experience. Maybe he sees the light. I don't know if they show that in the movie. But he comes out of the river, and he's not an asshole anymore. Something happened that caused him to have a psychic rearrangement, and he came out of the river, and all of a sudden he was nice, and he appreciated other people, and he wasn't as selfish as he had been before he went into the river. And Jung told this guy, his name was Roland Hazard, he said, that's what I've been trying to create for you. Create an experience that gets you to feel the need, the value in adopting an entire new way of looking at things. But again, he used the word spiritual, but there was also psychic. Psychic, spiritual, I happen to believe that the two things are interconnected. But again, that goes into, we got to explore our definition of spirituality. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean religion, but Jung at the time, all he really said to him is, because it was something in spiritual nature, he said, my only suggestion to you is get around some religious folks. You need something to happen that changes you completely. And so what ended up happening was Roland Hazard came back to the States, and he gets involved with what's called the Oxford Group. That was sort of a religious kind of program that they used some steps or some principles for self-improvement, and I think they were, using that to help recover from alcoholism.
Those are the principles we referred to earlier in the stream.
And there was a guy in there named Ebby Thatcher that Roland met there. And Ebby Thatcher was a friend of Bill Wilson's. And so there's another story in the AA Big Book where Bill Wilson's telling about his friend Ebby came and visited him. And Ebby was like 6 months sober at the time. And Bill Wilson describes the guy, it was the same friend that I'd known from years ago, but there was something different about him. Describes him sitting across the table, and I said he looked the same, but other than that, I didn't recognize him because he was different. Something had changed about him. And so Bill asked him, so what's going on? How have you gotten sober? And Ebby told him, I got religion. Let me see what my next slide says. He carries the message to Bill Wilson. And he says, I got religion. And Bill Wilson thinks to himself, oh, great. He was an alcoholic crackpot. Now he's a religious crackpot. And Bill Wilson was resistant to what Ebby was getting ready to say. Oh, he's here to evangelize me. And so that's an important point, I think, for people to recognize, is that Bill Wilson, the founder of AA, co-founder of AA, his first attitude about the spirituality was he was resistant. He didn't want Ebby to tell him about God and try to convince him that he has to believe in God. And he told him that, and Ebby uttered these words, why don't you choose your own conception of God? And so that's an important point as far as the fact that he did not say you've got to join up, sign up for a specific religion. He said this could be open-ended, and again, that choose your own conception of God, I'm not even going to take the time to go into it in this talk, but that can be a very deep conversation as far as what that can mean.
It's deeper defined in the book as an all-powerful being or entity that you can turn your will over to. And I don't know how else you would create a conception of, you could even have a deistic God, because a deistic God would have no will for you to turn over, right?
But that worked for Bill, and you could say the rest is history. The fact that, okay, maybe I can work with that, because then they got past the God part, and then, okay, what are the other things that we're doing to help better ourselves? The principles of what, he ended up developing the 12 steps, and Alcoholics Anonymous took off, and it became one of the fastest growing successful programs around the world. And so in 1961, let me see what my next slide here. Correspondence to Bill Wilson, 1961. In 1961, Bill Wilson wrote Carl Jung a letter, and he said, I don't know if you're aware of the significant contribution you made to you laid the groundwork for Alcoholics Anonymous, which has become this big successful thing and has helped thousands of people around the world. He said, I don't know if you're aware of your contribution, because the fact that you told Roland Hazard he was hopeless and that he should get some sort of spiritual experience, that laid the groundwork for AA. And this is the fascinating part. Bill Wilson got a letter right back from Carl Jung. And in the letter, first of all, Carl Jung said, man, am I ever glad to hear from you. I always wondered what happened to that patient, Roland Hazard. And he started off saying, there was so many things I wanted to tell him, but I don't think he was in a place to be able to hear them. That's an important point. But he said, Bill, and really what he did is, he said, all I could really say was, go get around some religious people. It's a spiritual kind of thing, but for some reason he felt like that patient at that time wasn't able to hear everything that Carl Jung wanted to tell him. But he said, Bill, I'm going to tell you what I wanted to say to him. And if I'll make this slide bigger here, he said, here's what I was thinking. His craving for alcohol was the equivalent on a low level of the spiritual thirst of our being for wholeness. The craving for alcohol was the equivalent on a low level of the spiritual thirst of our being for wholeness, expressed in medieval language, the union with God. So the union with God, that sounds sort of religious and sort of spiritual, right? But he even admits, he goes, that's medieval language. But he ties this thing with alcohol and spiritual experience. He believes that there's something about when people get to that point, what he was saying with Roland Hazard, people that have gotten to your point, I think he's talking about addiction, alcoholism. He's got craving. And what is it that we're craving? He's saying it's the desire for some sort of fulfilling experience, spiritual thirst of our being for wholeness. We want to be whole. That's what he's saying. He thinks alcoholism about is this craving for something that will fill us and make us whole. Then look what he says in this last paragraph here. He went on to tell Bill Wilson, you see, the word alcohol in Latin is spiritus. And it's actually the same word is used for alcohol as is for the highest religious experience. Spiritus, and it actually doesn't literally translate to God. It translates to the word breath, and that's an interesting thing. He says, so the same word in Latin is for alcohol and for spirit, breath, God, the highest religious spiritual experience. And when you think about it, what is breath? In the Bible, in the Christian faith, it talks about God breathed life into man. Breath is something that comes in, fills us, consumes us, brings life. It creates. And then the alcohol is actually something that comes in, as he described, as well as for the most depraving poison. He regarded alcohol, it wasn't Jung regarded it, many people, that was the part of the definition, as a depraving poison. And actually the word alcohol comes from an Arabic word, al-kul, which translates to body-eating spirits. The ancient alchemists, they saw alcohol as something they regarded as it deadens the senses. And when you think about it, the word spirits, think if you're familiar with what mineral spirits are, that's like turpentine, paint thinner, something. If you pour alcohol on a piece of meat, what's it going to do? It's going to dissolve and eat it away, just like paint thinner gets in and it dissolves. And there's the old Father Martin chalk talks. That's old drug treatment stuff from the 80s. He would give these lectures, and there's a famous, I just remember a scene from him talking about alcohol as a solvent. It gets in, just like the mineral spirits. He says it dissolves relationships. It dissolves bank accounts. And really what we're talking about is addiction. And so, again, the most depraving poison, it robs the spirit. It dissolves the spirit as opposed to adding to the spirit. And what Jung told him here in this last sentence, the helpful formula, therefore, is spiritus contra spiritum. That would be spirit with a capital S, maybe, that highest religious experience against the ravages of spirit. And so what Jung was suggesting was that the solution to addiction, to alcoholism, is actually replacing this most depraving poison, something that comes in and consumes us but eats away and dissolves and deadens, with something that comes in and fills us and consumes us and brings new life. Okay, so that's setting the stage for a continuum, a spectrum, where on one end we have the highest religious experience, and on the other end we have the sacred and the profane, is basically what I'm saying. And it's here we're going to shift gears then. This sets the stage for...
So, and what it says, spiritual growth, which could be just equated to personal growth, right? What they're calling spiritual growth is really just fundamental personal growth.
what is really going on with this desire to change how we feel. You know, what is it that we're looking for? That desire for the thirst for union with God. And I'm going to shift gears here. There's a book that
thirst for union with God, because we don't like the way we feel. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna finish this video right now. Let's see if I have thingy in here. Oh, you know what? It's going on 11 o'clock. You know what that means? It's probably time for me to wrap it up, put a neat little bow on it. Beep, beep. So yeah, I will close by saying once again, this isn't necessarily an end to this endeavor. I am rethinking my relationships to meetings in general, and the way I will function in recovery. I have kind of just a lot of things coming up that I have to deal with, and I will have to kind of consciously shift my focus to make sure that I'm accomplishing the things that I need to accomplish. One of those things is the birthday party, September 8th. So it is listed as an event as a private party at the Boardwalk in Orangevale, California. I'm not sure. So there's no promotion going on. It seems like it's going to be a gathering mainly for musicians. If anybody is interested in coming that doesn't know James, get a hold of me. I'm sure that I will be able to get you on a list of some kind. Not sure if there's going to be a cover charge or not. It seems like possibly not. So if that's the case, great, you know, to have a free show as well. And again, just a birthday celebration for a very good guy in the Sacramento music community. And the Trusty Apes will be playing a few songs out there. So yeah, that is my little spiel for tonight. I guess I will end by saying logic, empower me with serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And other than that, be kind, be well, and stay trusty. And I'll be doing something again fairly soon. All right, much love to everybody.